Hello, I am Zinfogel. So, welcome to yet another Datamine discussion video. This month we have 4 new simpers and a new grid for Ho. That's pretty cool. Let's get started. So, out of all the simpers in this video, Raihan has been released and he's playable, and I have a 1-5 copy, so I can give you a little more insight into his playstyle, unlike most of the other times where these videos are purely speculative. But Raihan is alright. He's still type of Pokefire striker, and he's got 3 coverage moves, so he's pretty much a Leon wannabe, very much like his actual personality. But he deals good damage and he chunks enemies, but the thing is that a lot of simpers already deal good damage and chunk enemies, so we gotta look through the finer details to separate him from other steel type strikers like Gloria or Steven, who also deal good damage. For Raihan, his stat spread is fine. He's got good offenses, his bulk is somewhat poor, his HP offsets his poor defenses, but he's really squishy on the special side, especially because his trainer move punishes you with a special defense drop, so you gotta watch out for that. And he's also slow, and this is bad because he spams a forward move. We have a Steel Beam, and in the main games this cuts your maximum HP in half, not your current HP, your maximum HP. And it's the same in Pokemon Masters, but thankfully you have innate Stunfast 9, so you cut off 90% of this recoil, and after 20 Steel Beam uses, Raihan goes down, without accounting any other residual damage, and that is workable, specifically because your trainer move is very potent. The trainer move gives you +2 crit, it gives you super effective next, it gives you free move next, and regeneration, plus the special defense drop. And regeneration is what makes Steel Beam bearable, because regen heals more than Stunfast 9 Steel Beam recoil, so you get a lot more uses out of Raihan, and you can just spam it through an entire encounter. Steel Beam is also an absurdly strong attack, given the downside. It's better than Inferno and Blastborn, so you can totally spam this through an entire encounter. It's very, very usable. Beyond that, you have Dragon Pulse, which is fairly ignorable because we have a decent free-to-play special Dragon types. Zinnia, Claire, Cyrus, if you really want to go there. So this is always worse than Steel Beam. I think even super effectively, but I don't know the calculation. But it's weak. Steel Beam is better. And Rock Slide is a legitimate coverage option. Like, I use this against Alder on Master Mode. And it's solid because it's physical, so it gives you a distinction between Steel Beam and Dragon Pulse. And Raihan's attack stat is fairly high, so with some defense drops, this can chunk enemies very well. So it's some decent rock type coverage if you're looking for that. And besides that, you got the bread and butter of Raihan. You got Ferocious Entry 4 and Hellstar 1. Ferocious Entry 4 raises attack and special attack by 4 stages when you enter the battle. And you also get a little bit of sync countdown when you enter the field. So Raihan's playstyle is all about immediate buffing. You get the Ferocious Entry plus this trainer move that raises crit by 2 stages, only 1 use though. So you still need a little help to top yourself off because you don't fully maximize attack, special attack, or crit. So if you can give him some support from Signasu Blue, that would be pretty fine. But Raihan can just make do with his innate buffs. He just buffs extremely quickly. He's very, very efficient at it. So after playing with Raihan, his gauge issues aren't nearly as bad as you might imagine. Steel Beam is both a blessing and a curse, because yes, it's dealing recoil damage that you regenerate anyway, but you have to watch that interaction happen, and watching recoil plus regen is very slow, and it helps the gauge catch up a little bit. But even then, you still want a faster partner to pick up the gauge that Raihan is dragging behind. Somebody like a Palentine's Dawn to complement the Steel Beam with special defense drops. And that is Raihan's greatest perk, where, yeah, he doesn't fully maximize his offenses, but he's so extremely efficient at buffing that you can run a couple defensive partners alongside him, and Raihan will carry a Battle's offense just fine, even at 1-5. So, something about Raihan is that most of his passives are really, really expensive. For example, you have a Grand Entry 2 that costs 12 energy. This kinda hurts Raihan's utility because you have all these wonderful entry passives but no energy to grab them because you'd rather go for raw multipliers, and he's not easily customizable. This is an issue that plays him all around. Either way, 1-5 is solid just because you have a Steel Beam accuracy +5. So you turn your best move 100% accurate, and that is great. You don't need accuracy support to make him reliable, and like that, but outside of that, there is nothing too relevant here. 2-5, you get the pinpoint entry 1, which is strange because, yeah, you can make both a Steel Beam and a Rock Slide accurate, but you have the raw accuracy tiles, so I'm not sure why you would do that. There is also Sands of Time 3 as well as Stoic 2, but the purpose of these tiles are not as apparent until you go for a full grid, because you get a Tough Cookie and Surging Sand 3 as multipliers. Now, honestly, 1-5 Raihan is enough because going for these multipliers is for overkilling, so he can contend against the higher damage thresholds in the game, but he's not the strongest, but he's up there with these multipliers. So something I would do would be a Sun build with these multipliers as well as the Sun utility. You can also Sing Nuke with Sun Blaster 5. And I would pair him alongside Jasmine, for example, to activate type skills and buff up defense a little faster, so you can top off Top Cookie, and Acerola to activate Sand. Although Skyle is probably a more cohesive partner because you want the speed buffs. Raihan is always really slow, but Sands of Time 3 alleviates that if your partners are fast. But yeah, this will work out nicely. And funnily enough, with this grid, Raihan is Rock Slide is stronger than Olivia's Stone Edge, although Olivia is still a better Rock type striker because she has the Rock type Sync and she has a better Sync Nuke. The other thing I would consider would be ignoring the Sun gimmick and going for a grand entry grid just to maximize your special attack. You would still be missing some crit buffs, but that doesn't matter too much because you still have 80% crit, and missing crits is not the end of the world. And this would be a good striker. You don't really want a recoil removal because, as I mentioned earlier, the recoil doesn't really matter with your regeneration. But yeah, that's just your bread and butter set, and not much else to see here. Raihan is a solid striker, he deals good damage. If you're looking for a solid steel type striker at 1-5, Raihan absolutely gets the job done. Alright, here we have Father of the Year, Ghetsis and Kyurem. You have probably heard how good this guy is already, and the rumors are correct. Ghetsis is an abject monster. He is extremely strong, very versatile. He fits on a ton of team archetypes, and as a free-to-play legendary sync pair, everybody who plays his event gets a free 5-5 2020. So this is a kind of sync pair who is going to change things for the better. As an Ice-type tech, Ghetsis is already fulfilling an important niche in the metagame where we were in dire need for Ice-types. You may notice a 4-bar Glaciate here, so at base, just looking at this move alone, Ghetsis is already a very good Ice-type striker. And while Bryce and Dugong are very competent in their own right, their Hail and Freeze multipliers are conditional, so they are more nuanced than just spamming a 4-bar move. And the last Ice-type introduced was Summer Steven. That was nearly a year ago, so we were really needing something like this, and the fact that it's free to play is insane. Alright then, looking at the stat spread, it's excellent. You have amazing special attack, good bulk, you could meme tank with this if you really wanted to, average speed, but nothing a support cannot fix. Now, as mentioned earlier, we have a Glaciate. This is a 4-bar Icy Wind clone. It's way stronger, it has accuracy issues, it's AoE, and it always drops the target's speed stat. And this is important because you have Hunter's Instinct and Innate Cakewalk on your Sync move, so this is a large reason for why Ghetsis is as strong as he is. If you can hasten the speed debuffs, then Glaciate is as strong as Signature Cynthia is Clanging Scales, which is an obscene move to begin with. And then we have some utility, remember this tech sync pair. Noble Roar is a status move, single target, drops attack and special attack, and you can enhance with a double drop on the grid, which is fine. I guess you can use that on Champion Stadium stalls or something, but it feels like a waste of Ghetsis' true potential as a nice type striker. Then we have Dragon Bread. It's very forgettable. It's a weak move that has a 30% chance of paralyzing the target. You can enhance it with Hostile Environment 1 on the grid, but we have better paralysis applicators, starting with Erika and Kalem. and whatnot. And then the trainer move, it has a really funny name, but it raises crit and it can raise a special attack from 1 up to 3 star ranks. I'm not sure how it will function. Probably if you're on critical health, it raises a special attack by 3 stages, but case on point, it makes Kyurem into a self-sufficient striker, and you also have an NPR 3 on the grid for a trainer move, so you can maximize crit, and this will make a great complement for pairs like Leaf or Sycamore, most importantly, so that they can maximize your special attack if you weren't able to do so. So then the Sing move, as mentioned earlier, in a Cakewalk, so you can enhance it that way, and Anti-Freeze to prevent random AoE freezes or whatever. Okay, and the grid is where things get really, really juicy. So to me, Ghetsis' best style is Glaciate Cold Snap 2. This gives your very strong 4-bar move a 30% chance of proccing an AoE freeze. You disable everything on the enemy field when it happens. That is very scary. Crowd control this strong is the reason why Serena's so overpowered as she is. Damage prevention is very abusive in general, and the fact that you have this tied to your main damaging move bodes extremely well for Ghetsis. Most importantly, because this is an added effect, it doesn't suffer from the dumb nerf that AoE procs tend to have. If you didn't know, AoE procs are actually nerfed, they are cut in half. Think Rock Slide, where it's supposed to be a 30% chance of proccing, but when it's AoE, it's a 15% chance. A good example here would be Signature Leaf is Venomous 4, where yes, it's an AoE proc, but it still procs 50% of the time because it's an added effect. So this means that Ghetsis is now the most reliable freezer in the game, and this is excellent news for one particular simper that people are already disregarding, and that is my guy, Price on Dugon. Historically, Price is the go-to Ice-type striker for a majority of players because a lot of people miss Summer Steven. And Price is strong, he's a good striker. People normally play him with the Hail build alongside Candice or Teclapras to go for the 60% multiplier as well as the recovery. And that is fine, but it's certainly underplaying Price's true potential, because at the other corner of the grid we have Freeze Synergy 16. That is crazy good. That is 160 multiplier. Only Cynthia and Garchomp go for Asteroids this card. So when it happens, you get a very, very good payoff. And in current meta, you can totally go for this build. You can pair Price with Glacia for the Hostile Environment 2 Ice Beam or Hostile Environment 1 Powder Snow. And when the proc happens, Price deals some really scary numbers. But now that we have Ghetsis, things got really, really interesting for these two, because they synergize almost perfectly. Like, it's a tango. You have a Ghetsis who freezes things for Price, and then in turn Price can proc speed debuffs with Icy Wind, because remember, this is a Glaciate clone, so you can hasten Hunter's Instinct and Cakewalk for Ghetsis, and Ghetsis can Sing Nuke for Price, and the gauge management is not that bad, because Price gets Icy Wind MGR4 and Ghetsis has Glaciate MGR3, and given the fact that both of them raise crit by themselves, means that you can just slap a Cernias in there for the instantaneous +6 speed and special attack and the gauge acceleration. The enemy field is going to die by the time the gauge acceleration wears off. And Ghetsis and Price also activate type skills with each other. It's crazy good how well they synergize together. Like, by the time people realize the true strength of Free Synergy 16 Price, I think Sycamore, Ghetsis, and Price is going to be a staple metagame core. And the fact it's free to play is also bonkers. So to that end, I got this build here called Price Best Friends Forever. Ghetsis now needs to believe in the power of friendship because he can totally conquer the world with the aid of Price. But in this build, Ghetsis will play the role of a Sing Nuker, and you go for the NPR to maximize crit and Glaciate accuracy to make it reliable. That is it, really. Now, another mode for Ghetsis is Paralysis Synergy 3. Instead of freezing targets, you can paralyze them for the consistent multiplier and have Ghetsis be the core of your offense. And if you have Palantine Serena, even at 1-5, she will be an excellent complement to Ghetsis, because she spreads the AoE paralysis to help Glaciate, and she can also drop the enemy's speed with AoE Cotton Spore and very massively boost Kyurem's power. Although I don't like it as much as Price plus Ghetsis because Price attacks the enemy while also helping Ghetsis. But, I guess Valentine's Arena has less gauge management issues, so it depends on your preferences, but both of them are very strong. They are Ghetsis' besties, but finally I would consider a sync looking mode with a pecking order so that you can erase targets when given the correct support through partners like Mina, for example. Although instead of Devastation, you have Overpower, so this is not as potent as you might imagine because Overpower buffs your moves, it doesn't buff your sync nuke. But when given the correct support, you can also benefit from this, for example, from Champion Iris. But Ghetsis still has to work at the speed debuffs himself through Glaciate, and he can only apply 3 at a time per sync cycle, so I don't think this is as good as the other structures, but it will work out fine. Also, speaking of Champion Iris, Ghetsis also complements her very well because with a Noble Roar double drop, he can fully buff Devastation and Pecking Order, so yeah, Ghetsis is just a very, very versatile unit. Even if you don't want to bother with the Price or Valentine's Arena modes, Ghetsis is still an excellent standalone Ice-type striker. He is really strong. Continuing the legendary Sync trend, our boy Silver finally has agreed. So I guess it's time for a little history lesson. Silver, he always felt like an overshadow Simper, specifically because he's a fire type, so he has to compete against the highly coveted Signature Red and Leon, but Silver has his advantages. Specifically, he's got Solar Eyes. This is an amazing passive that allows him to summon Sunny Day when he sinks. And Weather has a myriad of perks. Specifically for Sunny Weather, it boosts fire type damage by 50% and it activates several passives like a Healing Sun and Charging Sun and Spinning Sun. Silver's got a couple of those. So Silver's always has had this playstyle where he has to nuke to summon Weather because his damage is pathetic otherwise. If you look back at his stats, this is nothing to write home about. Even with the 2020 potential, these offenses are not amazing and he's a little squishy considering he's maxed out. So Silver was always tied down to some structures, but that is fine because they have very strong components, specifically Erika, who can tank for Silver. She can fully maximize her defenses and benefit from Healing Zone too. And another issue with Silver is that he's dependent on his partners to deal with damage because he is not self-sufficient. He only buffs Creed. He can maximize it thankfully because his trainer move raises Creed and its efficiency is increased when the weather is sunny, and you can also buff evasion, but it's not too relevant. Either way, he needs attack, special attack, and speed buffs. Do know that Silver Sync is physical, so he is actually a mixed striker. And if you are only focusing on overheat as part of your buffing, then you are neglecting your Sync move, which may or may not harm your strategy. But nothing Lyra cannot fix as a partner. So he has good partners, and you just gotta adjust to the fact that he needs to nuke all the time, or he just will not do that well. As far as moves go, you got Overheat. This is a strong 3-bar move that deals amazing damage, but it drops your special attack, so that means that you want Dauntless as a lucky skill. Overheat has always been Silver's best output. And then you got Solar Beam. This is a really strong charging move that skips the charging phase when the weather is sunny, and it's a grass type, so you got some solid coverage here. And Circuit Fire is really weak. It's the same base power as Scald, but it has a 50% chance of burning the target, which you can enhance on the grid with Hostile Environment 1. But the grid itself is mildly disappointing. Don't get me wrong, this is not a bad grid because you have a ton of asteroids, so Silver can deal even better damage now, but my qualm is that you still have self-sufficiency issues. If anything, you have more tact on top, because now you have speed-based multipliers, but only fast-track to increase them. Okay, sure. This means that you still need offensive support from Lyra or Roxanne, but if you can get through that, then Silver is not going to disappoint. At least you have accuracy tiles for the moves that can miss now. You have Overheat accuracy and Sacred Fire accuracy, so that was one annoying aspect of Silver compared to other fire-type strikers. But before we even check the rest, just to let you know, Dauntless Overheat is always Silver's best output. Even if you go for max multipliers on Sacred Fire, even if you go for all the Solar Beam tiles. because it can have the fire type boost from Sunny Day. Overheat with dullness is always the best and most consistent. I guess if you want to be pedantic, you can go for critical strike 2 and constant special attack buffs, but overheat is what you should focus on. The only way Solar Beam can out damage overheat is with grassy terrain, so until then, you gotta focus on overheat. So, considering that Silver always wants to nuke to maintain weather, inertia is a given. And if you're buffing speed, you might as well go for ramming speed to buff the base power of all your moves. And Fast Track 3 is on the way and it's relatively cheap, so you might as well grab it just in case you cannot buff your speed that reliably through your partners. And you also gotta consider that Overheat MGR 3 is only 2 energy for some reason. It's super cheap. So with all these considerations, I got a bunch of builds here developed by Ropalme, so credits to him. But first we have a standard Ho, and this is just your classic Ho playstyle, but better. You got sinking tiles as well as inertia to buff your sink move, and overheat tiles so you stop missing. This will make Ho into a very good, consistent fire type striker. As a parenthesis, you might notice that this build is going for more special attack tiles instead of overheat tiles, but this is intentional because it gives Silver a better output. His special attack is so low that giving him the raw stat is better than going for base power for this specific unit. And you can also build for Solar Beam. You can go for all the tiles and Solar Beam charging Zone 3, but you can also forfeit some of these stat tiles and then go for MGR2 on Solar Beam, but it's only a 2-bar move, so you won't have issues spamming it, so you might as well go for the stats, because Silver needs help in that department. This will aid his offense by a fair margin, and you can also go for a Seeker Fire build. I don't think this is proper. It's still a pathetically weak move, even with a multiplier. But I guess if you want to help a Leon or something activate the Burn Synergy 3, it would be adequate. But honestly, I don't think this is a good way to play Ho. Don't notice that in all these builds I've been forfeiting Power Source 4 because it's a nightmare to set up, but if you can fit that into your strategy, it will be a good idea because it's a chunky multiplier. And I've also been forfeiting Solar Flare 5, and this is strange because you might think, oh, I always have a Sunny Day active, but that is not quite the case. If you haven't played with Solar Ice before, the interval it lasts just happens to be short enough to shoot off before your next sync move arrives. So normally you activate the Sunny Day and then right before your second sync it deactivates. So then you miss Solar Flare 5 by the nick of time. But it's viable if you can use sync acceleration or bring a Sunny Day partner to guarantee that Sunny Day is active while your sync is happening. So I would do something like this as a sync nuking build alongside Blaine or Tech Ninetales, which is yet to be released. But you know, the Sunny Day before Ho syncs, and this also helps you accelerate your crit buffs as well as buffs from Lyra if you are bringing her. But I think this would be a really good way to play pre-sync clears on Master Mode. With Solar Flare 5 plus Inertia, that's a very strong nuke. Even with Ho's low base attack, it would still deal good damage after type skills. So that's about everything there is to say about this guy. Nothing groundbreaking, but I always had a soft spot for Silver because when I started using Solarized based team structures, I started really enjoying strategy in this game. Like, it allowed me to see things on a greater lens. So it's a really fun unit to play, if there is anything to go by. Up next, we have some new Galar gym leaders, starting with Bea and Sirfetch'd. Bea, V, I tried looking it up, but the pronunciations have been inconsistent, so I'm gonna stick with Bea. Anyway, she's a fighting type of striker, and it's been a really long time since I've been excited about a striker like this, because Bea has a really fun spin on it. So, she's only got one damaging move, but it's 4 bars, brutally strong, and with no downsides. 100% accurate and no side effects, so that is crazy good. And the mechanic here is that you have 3 turn moves, so you're supposed to use Meteor Assault and then alternate between your attack and speed buffs, and your turn move raises defense, some evasion, and it also gives you regen, which is amazing, so that's a free potion. And yeah, that's fun and all, but we're accustomed to 4-bar strikers, and we can just spam Meteor Assault every round when given the proper support. But most importantly, you have Sharp Entry 2. It's reminiscent of Raihan in a way, because plus 2 crit is very, very strong. There is very few Simpers in this game who have sharp entry. Flint and Infernape have sharp entry 1, and Cynthia and Garchomp also have sharp entry 1, but she gets the Mega Evolution, so she gets the extra buff upon Mega Evolving, and that is great, but Bea just gets that upon entry. That's Dire Hit Plus without any effort. You also get Critical Strike 3 for a free multiplier and steady aim in case we get AoE Snatch ever. But yeah, that's a very strong base kit. The stats are also decent. Somewhat squishy, I don't like the bulk at all, but the attack stat is what matters, and you have some okay speed. It's functional. Now, the grid is boring until the 3-5, as usual. 1-5 doesn't have anything, excess speed NPR and Nervous Energy 1. When you get hit by an interference, you raise your speed, I guess to replicate Rattle from the main games, but you are not ever tanking with this, even with evasion buffs. You will die when you get hit. And 2-5 you get NPRs and MGR1 on Meteor Assault. That's a funny meme, I guess. And you also get Crit Ferocity 2 to help with attack buffs in case you want Bea to handle that by herself, but that's about it. Some sinking tiles, but 3-5. Oh boy, 3-5. You get this new passive, Critical Charge 9. When you land a crit, you raise gauge, so it's effectively MGR 9 for Meteor Assault, so that is very, very good. You get a ton more sinking tiles. You get a Sharp Entry 1 to complement Sharp Entry 2, so you get maximum critical hit rate upon entry. Now, this is actually unprecedented. That is some crazy, crazy fast setup. And we also get Inertia for some proper Sing Nuking. So now we have a good fighting type Sing Nuker. Before then, we had a Broly, which is hilarious, considering that we had proper fighting type gachas before. But Cakewalk Wall is not impressive at all. Spring May cannot really Sing Nuke, she doesn't have any multipliers. And Sirfetch'd can finally fill that gap at long last. And then we also have Soften Up 1. This gives you the passive that allows Celine and Cyrus to always crit their Sing moves. And this will be amazing, but the problem is that it's so far off the way that it's not really worth going for. Like the standard build would be something like this. Go for all the sinking tiles as well as the MGR to help you maintain gauge, and Sharp Entry 1 just to give you the setup, and you only need attack buffs from some partner. Although most partners that buff attack can already buff crit, like Torchic, Maylin, and Hilbert, but well, it gives you the option of not requiring so in case you want to buff Bea with Lisa, for example. But yeah, you always want to go for Inertia if you are Sing Nuking with her. But I guess if you really want to, you can forfeit this and then go for Soften Up 1. I would not recommend it though. You have all these Sing tiles available, and not taking advantage of them feels like a crime. But yeah, that's pretty much everything to say about Bea. Yes, she's just another striker that murders things, but at least she's extremely efficient about it. Last but not least, we have the queen herself, Nessa Drednaw. And my commentary might be mildly pessimistic here, but that is a byproduct of the fact that the current metagame is chock full of water type simpers. Like, why would you invest on a new one if you already have a 6-star EX May, you know, but whatever. Nessa is still great, like, she's a really good unit, I like her a lot. So for what it's worth, Nessa has a decent stat spread, attack is good, bulk is decent, speed is okay, we can make it work. Nothing too extraordinary though. Now, I think we should look at the passives before looking at the moves, because they will make more sense that way. Restrain power of 5, it buffs your moves when you're restrained, okay, that is a little weird. Ripple Effect 9, it spreads debuffs when they are successful, so this always happens because you have the 9 tag in there. And Restrain Freebie 3, when you're restrained, you have a chance of proccing free move next, which is really good given that she has some expensive moves to use here. And your tech multiplier happens when the target is restrained. So what is with this restraining garbage? That's because you have a Jaw Lock, and Jaw Lock applies restrain on yourself and on the target. And it doesn't matter because on standard play you're never switching out unless you are in co-op, so it's whatever. More so you can benefit from the perks that you get from being restrained because you have a ton of passes derived from that for some reason. And then you also have a Razor Shell. That's a decent tribal move that has a 50% chance of dropping the target's defense, and if it happens, it procs for the entire enemy field with Ripple Effect 9. So I really like that. I love debuffing, specifically defenses, and it's a really solid chance, so can't complain about that. and maybe procs with Defense Crush too. I will go check with the Palentine's Dawn, but Dazzling Gleam is AoE, so I cannot tell the difference. But we'll have to see when Nessa drops. And then we have Rock Tomb, drops speed, which is okay because you have some multipliers derived from speed drops in the grid. But it's AoE because of Ripple Effect 9. And the turn move is great because it gives you +2 attack, +1 crit, and if the weather is rainy, you get +6 speed to patch up that mediocre speed stat. So you can imagine what the grid is going to look like because of what we got on the grid. You have things focused on restraint, you have things focused on defense drops, speed debuffs, and rain. Mechanically, the first thing you need to do with Nessa is use Jaw Lock, so you can apply restraint on yourself and on your sinking target. And unlike most other tech simpers, Nessa is very efficient with her multiplier because it's derived from an interference that she's applying on herself, which is somewhat awkward, kind of like Iris with Confusion Boom 5. But for Nessa, it doesn't have any drawbacks, and you don't need a Unlucky skill to mitigate the side effect. Know that restraint is permanent, so you have that buff all the time active the first time you use Jaw Lock. So I really like that, and after using Jaw Lock, you can attempt to use a Razor Shell or whatever, but Jaw Lock is still your strongest move, so you should probably keep spamming that. Now, Nessa's grid is actually quite solid through all her stages. At 1-5 you get a very important NPR3 on your turn move that raises crit and attack. So NPR3 is very reasonable for resetting, and if you proc it, you can have a fully self-sufficient striker, which is a good quality to have. 2-5 gives you a multiplier for your sync, Cakewalk. It's not that amazing because you only debuff speed by 1 stage per use with Rock Tomb, and Rock Tomb is very mediocre, but it's something, and I don't need to tell you how strong Tech Nukes can get to be. And now the 3-5, the full grid is where you get a few more toys. Specifically, you have the newest and latest, strongest Sinuk in the game, because you have 3 tech multipliers. And you also have an innate buff from Rain Dance because your Sing move is Water type, so you can buff it by 50% just with the weather alone. And with these 3, you can erase anything, but the problem is that setting them up is quite difficult. So if you want to go for maximum damage sync, you can do this, but I don't know how you're setting that up. Like, you can maybe drop defense and speed with Elio, I guess? And then you need Mei as a partner to give you the Rain Dance, but having Nessa take care of the sync multipliers by herself is quite an accomplishment. I'm not sure how you're going to set that up. Now, for an actually practical build, I would focus on Rain probably, because you get the innate 50% multiplier from rainy weather, and Mei is already a very strong offensive partner who can fix Gauge with Racing Rain 4 or whatever it is. But with this build, you get multipliers from Rain, you get Hold Hostage, so you can enhance your attacks a little further, because you wanted to restrain something with Jaw Lock. So what you can do is just target the center one and just keep hammering that while Mei takes care of the sides. That would be some great synergy, and you also get a Restrain Recovery 1, but well, it is recovery, and if it's just a regeneration recovery, it would be good, because recovery is better than nothing, you know? And yeah, that is pretty much everything to see about this grid, because everything else is somewhat forgettable. Razor Shell, Critical Focus 1, okay, whatever, I have a trainer move that raises crit, so I don't really care. And I want Hilbert to buff me up fully anyway. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hunter's Instinct, I hate this multiplier because the speed debuffs are terrible, even if you have Palentine Serena helping you out, like... Ghetsis is an extraordinary example because of how strong Glaciate is, but I'm not a big fan of this. But I think I have said my piece. Thank you for watching, and good luck on your pulls if you're pulling for anything. Now that I have Raihan, I think I'm just gonna skip the rest of the month, because Bea and Nessa are going on the general pool, so hey, that's it. Take care, stay healthy, and I hope to see you another time.